The deal is this. Tell you, when I was a kid, I read Dropper Anton Wilson, all this real. Tell you, when I was a kid, I read Dropper Anton Wilson, all this real dope. Dude, I'm pissed. Real dope. Dude, I'm pissed. Come on. What? Okay, by the time we finish this, you're all going to be practicing magicians.
I'm Jeremy Greer.
And I am Gary Butterfield.
And this is Days of Future Cast, the podcast where Gary and I are currently going through New X-Men, the X-Men series from Grant Morrison back in 2001 to 2004. We are currently on issue number 132, and we're in between arcs. We've taken care of Cassandra Nova. We've gone and done some Sublime stuff, some John Sublime stuff. We freed Zorn, and now we met Phantom X, Weapon 13, or as Wolverine very helpfully reminds the audience in one of these issues, Weapon X111.
Yeah, this is how you learn Roman numerals from Wolverine. What the hell's an M? A C's 100. Snicked.
They put some Jeopardy episodes up on Hulu, and it was like the greatest of all time competition with like Ken Jennings and two other guys that definitely didn't win that. But one of the categories,
the second and nobody remembers the second and third greatest of all time.
No, not at all. I mean, they walked off with like $250,000, right? Like, so I mean, like it's good for them, but they didn't get the literal GOAT trophy that they created for that thing. But one of the categories was I don't remember what they called it, but it was basically it was Roman numerals, so you had to figure out what a Roman numeral representation for a number was, and then use that to get to the name of an artist because that's their initials.
Yeah,
and it's just like, how the fuck are you supposed to do this in like 5 seconds? Like, what are you doing, Jeopardy?
Yeah, 5 seconds if you're the slowest Jeopardy person
ever
on Earth, because you have to the buzzing discipline is the big Jeopardy thing. Yeah, when you do that, that's the big tip that people have when I've read like accounts of people who have been on the show and stuff. That's wild. I wouldn't be able to do good at well at that.
No,
I got Roman numerals up to 20 or so, and then I'm about done.
Yeah, once you get into the M and the L's, I think it's mostly L's. Because I hate the Super Bowl, so I just don't even pay attention to Roman numerals anymore.
I'm extremely bad at remembering anything that's just a string of numbers and letters.
Mm-hmm.
Like it makes it as a musician. And specifically as a key, like guitars have cool names, like Fender, Stratocaster, Rickenbacker and stuff. Mm-hmm. Keyboards all have names like, Korg, XL, S1 Pro Series 232 and shit like that. And it makes it extremely hard to talk to other musicians and magicians probably. Where like they'll be like, hey, what kind of keyboard do you use? And I had to be like,
it's black.
It's white. Yeah, it's white. Like I happen to have a keyboard I can name right now. I cannot name my secondary keyboard or any other keyboard I've ever used. That's like a professional series keyboard.
Damn.
Because it has a name, it's not like numbers and letters.
I get that. I get that when people ask me what kind of mic I use to record with. I'm like,
sure.
I don't even remember. Like, I bought it 2 years ago and it works. Like, there's no branding on it, which is my favorite thing about it. Like, so I can't even look at the mic and see what it is.
This is a thing where like I hate that kind of fetishization of like kind of gear, kind of thing. I get hate's too strong a word, but like it just doesn't work for me as a thing. And you and I are the same that way. Like, I would much prefer just to be like, yeah, it works. I don't care about it. And now I get to like file that in the part of my brain that's the don't think about this and think about other stuff instead.
Yeah.
And then eventually things in that room get forgotten, like a crisper in a fridge. And it's great. I don't need to know. So who gives a shit? It's not useful to know.
One of my very good friends was going to start this like weird Christian, because he's super Christian or super Catholic, and he's gonna start this weird like Catholic podcast where they have like these intense theological discussions about Catholicism and bullshit, and like
Sure.
his friend is super like scholarly and academic about all this stuff in the most boring way possible. Like they don't talk about any of like the cool saints that died. Like it's all just like super in depth theory or whatever.
Yeah.
But so they call me up and we're like, okay, what should I get? And I'm like, well, are you going to record in the same room? Are you going to record remotely and all that stuff? And they were kind of went back and forth. And then they're in our little podcast co-op that I run for several different shows. And they've been paying me every month to host a podcast that they have not released because one of the guys is so hung up on getting the perfect gear for this that he just hasn't recorded anything. And Thursday or Friday, he called me and he was like, so he wants to get like 2 Scarlett interfaces, but I'm worried that that's not going to work on one computer. And I'm like, what the fuck are y'all doing? Just get a snowball and record. And like, if people like it, like start upgrading. Like, just nobody is going to care about any of this. Just spend $100 and start it.
100%. Like, that's always my number one like piece of advice for podcasters, and that's something I bring from the music world as well. Like, I know so many people who play music who will not do anything until everything is perfect, and that's the opposite. Yeah. Like, like you just start your podcast with like an okay sounding microphone and free software, and just start your recording project with a 4-track tape recorder or your computer and a Casio, and then go from there. Like, I think that early like ramshackle shit's important.
Yeah, and
also you don't even know if you like doing it.
And that was like what I told my buddy is like, you guys have spent a year not recording a podcast, and you spent money for not recording a podcast. Like, what are you doing? Like,
do you like this hobby? You don't fucking even know. And do people want to listen to it? You don't know. Like,
you don't have time. Like, you don't have anything that you were going to do. So, anyway,
it's fucking that's weird. Anywho, speaking of,
we are 12 minutes into this podcast, Gary.
Speaking of projects that don't go anywhere. Issue 132 of New X-Men.
Yes.
Because can you like, with the best will in the world, can you tell me why this issue happens?
I mean, like, did Grant Morrison just really want to like write up a story about Polaris and like weird magnetic ghost something? I don't like. A lot of this doesn't make a ton of sense to me. And like,
no, this is quietly one of the worst issues in the series.
It really is.
I think.
There's a lot of weird undercurrents too, like, we'll get to it, but like Thunderbird is here, and Xavier as the audience stand-in, the reader stand-in, is like, I thought you were dead. It's like, must be some other guy. Never going to try up on that in this series, because that's probably some other weird comic book that we're not going to do. Like, it's just very strange.
Real fucking weird. Well, that's in the next issue.
Oh,
which is also extremely weird.
Yeah. I thought that was
this one's all Genosha. So as with the best will in the world, what I think they're doing with this is following up on Genosha, because they keep telling us how important it is, but it's been a while since we've seen it, and we're gonna run it. The next arc after this is the Riot of Xavier's, and one of Quentin Quire's like big points is like, hey, why should we be sympathetic to humans? They did this horrible tragedy. Gotta remind us of the tragedy, right? I get that. Second bit is a little bit of foreshadowing, for he needs to remind everybody, like, hey, even though Magneto's dead, his shadow looms really large over this culture and society. That's great.
Very good.
But Polaris, like, why? Polaris doesn't do anything in this. Like, the other Thunderbird that they have here doesn't do anything in this. Like, all the magnet stuff is just like weird junk science that doesn't like. It's just Grant Morrison throwing a bunch of Grant Morrison words in a food processor and hoping,
the magnetic stuff here doesn't make any sense to me, even if I just like try to forget everything that I know about anything. Like, it doesn't make comic book sense to me. Like, it's really kind of really poorly visually represented as well. So it just looks like did Magneto save all of these memories as gloops of metal or something? And like, it's just, there's a lot of weird
just as magnetic waves.
Yeah. So this is a weird issue in general for me. I do like the idea of going back to Genosha and checking in on the rebuilding effort there is very cool. And like, even the conversations that they have, and we'll get to it, but of like, what are we even doing here? What lesson can we even learn from 16 million people dying within like a span of a couple of minutes? Like, that's really interesting stuff, but they don't go down that road at all. Instead, we spend a lot of time talking to Toad and Polaris.
Toad and Polaris about magnets. Which is just not that interesting. I will say that in the series, this is one of my favorite covers. Like, I love the cover of this issue, which is showing them building this gigantic Magneto statue that they're making. But I just think this image is very striking.
Yeah.
Like the little people kind of using their powers to construct this gigantic statue. I think that's cool looking.
And I like the idea of like the people that lived at Genosha who were super into Magneto, like doing this as a tribute to him. Like that's an interesting thing. Like even because Genosha was a little bit of a complex issue in the mutant world for a while, so it's just kind of cool that people are representing that. But yeah, I guess let's get into it so we could talk about how we don't like.
Yeah. I don't like this issue. Phil Jimenez is doing the art on this one, who is an artist I actually really like. I don't think he's perfect at action stuff. Like, I think I agree with you that some of the mechanics of what are happening is unclear, but I put that on Morrison's feed. I don't put that on Phil's. I think Phil's generally a pretty good artist.
Yeah, I like most of the representations of our cast in this.
So we start off with this like big sweeping shot of the ruins of Genosha, with the centerpiece being this gigantic Omega Sentinel. We've seen this Omega Sentinel before, this gigantic 3-faced jet human transformer hybrid, and just 3 figures. We don't know who they are yet. Just being like, I remember the space. This is actually where Magneto died, like the spot.
Yep. These 3 people are Quicksilver, Sabra, and other guy, Thunderbird.
Also Thunderbird. So this is, I think, Grant Morrison trying to tie into like, hey, other X-Men shit is happening.
Mm-hmm.
At this point. This Thunderbird was introduced in Claremont's Extreme X-Men.
Okay.
At the time, he's trash. Like, he's not a good character. Everything that Claremont did in that run is garbage. Like, not exaggerating, fucking sucks. And I read it. The worst comic I read every month. And so he's from that. He's fine.
Man, this is the weird perverse person that I am. It's like, oh, Gary said this is absolute garbage. I should read that sometime to see if I agree.
You should read the garbage that is Chuck Austen, because it's entertaining garbage. The Chris Claremont garbage of Extreme X-Men is just really hard to get through. It's extremely boring. But you should read the Chuck Austen X-Men. We should do the Chuck Austen X-Men. It's fucking fascinating.
Interesting garbage is something I'm absolutely here for.
Yeah.
So Sabra is basically saying like, I'm happy that Magneto died because he was a master race lunatic. And then like, Quicksilver having to pipe up and say like, Magneto was my father, but otherwise you were right.
Yeah.
It just leaves because Quicksilver is a huge dick in every representation we've ever seen him in.
Yeah, I like Quicksilver, and I like this representation of Quicksilver. He leaves. They're talking about, Sabra feels out of her depth. They're talking about going and meeting with Xavier when Xavier arrives. While Quicksilver is running around, he just happens to run past the path of like the villain from X-Men number 3 or something. So this is Eunice the Untouchable. Fairly certain this guy would not still be. I don't think he's alive in the continuity at this point. But like,
who cares?
It doesn't matter.
We need a guy with a shield so that we could depower the shield or something. So
yeah. So we can use the shield as a plot device. But this is not a consistent characterization with this guy, as far as I know. Like maybe he showed up in something else. I think this is just Grant Morrison taking somebody's superpower and extrapolating what their personality would be like from it.
Yeah, because the thing we haven't mentioned here is like our 3 X-Men characters are all in these like Iron Man suit kind of looking deals, like astronaut suits, because Genosha is soaked with very evil radiation. Not evil radiation, just bad radiation.
Regular radiation, spicy air.
The radiation doesn't have a morality system, right? It just doesn't choose to kill people. It just does.
Yeah, exactly. Chernobyl on HBO.
Yeah. Watch out for episode number 3, everybody.
Yeah, it's I just bought that on DVD last night because I was thinking about it, and I've been really obsessed with it. Since I watched it, I've been obsessed with it. I love that series. So Eunice is going crazy because he's saying like, oh, they came through my shield. I'm supposed to be untouchable, but the billions of ghosts just came through my shield and they're following her. We don't know what this means yet. And then we swap over to showing Jean Grey and Professor X arrive on the jet, also in their spacesuits.
Yes. There's a kind of a strip at the bottom where you can see some weird floaty business happening over at that Omega Sentinel statue that is, hey, that's important, but also just looks like Jubilee having a good time over there. So
or just like smoke from ruins.
Yeah, or
like,
that. Yeah.
Like, and to be fair, right? Like you put a gun to my head and say draw magnetic waves. Like I don't know, might have a hard time with that.
Oh yeah, don't get me wrong. Like I think you were absolutely right in laying this on Morrison because he's the guy that was that wrote all of this out, and he's sometimes he's extremely great at writing for a visual medium, and then sometimes he says probably stuff like the magnets are ghost, and you need to draw that around a statue.
Excuse me? Like, Grant, it's just magic, it's magic, dude. And then just like, fuck, man. Like, first of all, can we just don't make me go work with Alan Moore in his snake cave? Like, let's have a normal conversation for once in our fucking life, Grant. So we cut over to inside this dome. We've seen this gigantic X dome. We see Storm, who was hanging out with the Extreme X-Men at this time as well. We see, Neil, who is Thunderbird, Sabra, and Quicksilver. They're inside. They're out of their spacesuits. And I like Storm here. Like, if anyone's looking for brownie points, Charles Xavier loves green tea.
Nice.
Yeah.
And Charles wants to know kind of what happened that he has heard about them meeting the untouchable man, and wants to know what happened. So they go see him, and they do their whole telekinesis thing, and don't really find out a whole lot of information. All of the stuff that they're getting from him seems like super weird. The only thing that he mentions is that he's been seeing someone with green hair. And as they'll later mention, they only know one person with green hair. So.
And first of all, I find that hard to believe.
Me too. I didn't look it up, but me too.
Yeah. So like, not only do I not think that's true, but also big intuitive leap, right? And just to say positive things when they're positive, like, I kind of like, Storm saying, like, if anyone wants brownie points, and then Thunderbird, like, being, tripping over himself to introduce himself to Charles. I was thinking about this mostly with the Riot Xavier's arc that comes next. Doesn't this do a better job of showing kind of Charles Xavier being this jet-setting celebrity and that sucking than Phoenix did?
Yes, absolutely.
Like, it's real subtle. It's like a subtle theme, but him he's basically globetrotting, and he's been globetrotting for a while.
Yeah.
And him going through and people being like, oh, I saw you on the TV. Like, this just has as an undercurrent of the entire thing, like Charles Xavier's arrogance. And I really appreciate the treatment of it. The other thing I really like is Jean Grey's, like, Angelo Bambino. Calls him a Bambino. Eunice is Italian.
Excuse me?
Little Bambino.
What are you doing?
He's not. It's not Eunice's untouchable pizza. Like,
It's me, the untouchable man.
Pizza. You cannot eat of the slice.
They call me Bambino because I'm Italian now. Yeah, it's a very weird thing. Also,
weird touch.
There's a Marvel wiki that just has a green hair section. Because of course there is, and
Pornhub tag.
The biggest one is, I mean, right off the top is Jennifer Walters, right?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Yes.
What if it was She-Hulk and that was the person who was here to give tribute to Magneto?
There's also Abigail Brand, which I would imagine is somebody they would probably have crossed paths with before. I want to say that happened in Astonishing, but I can't remember.
Yeah, that happened after this chronologically. Abigail Brand had not been introduced in Marvel, I think. Mm-hmm. At this point, but She-Hulk was.
Oh yeah,
it'd be very funny if it's just like, you mean Polaris, and someone in the background is like thinking about She-Hulk, like, huh? So they go back to, we get this little conversation with Professor X and Storm.
Yes,
and this is the what do we get out of this tragedy kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a weird little moment too. I think this is alluding to a subplot with Storm and Xavier. I think Extreme X-Men kind of concerned itself with a little bit of like the team disagreeing with Xavier.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll see a little bit of that, the Murder at the Mansion arc, which is coming up. But this seems like there's some tension here between Storm and Professor X. Like, she's like, do you believe in ghosts? He's like, no. And she's like, I do believe. I think ghosts come in many forms. And Charles says, we don't talk very often these days, do we?
Which is a weird thing to say to that. Hey, Gary, I believe in ghosts. Really? Yeah. We don't really talk enough, Jeremy. Like, be like, Jeremy, I gotta go. I need to leave this conversation.
The fuck, man? But basically, they're just, again, saying it's been really horrible. Pity, grief, and Eunice saw something. We don't know what it is. And we see these floating kind of magnet shapes out in the field.
Yeah. They're going to have a further conversation with this, and Thunderbird is going to offer some green tea to Charles Xavier because he's trying to score them brownie points. And if they're and they start talking about, like, if this is Polaris, we got to go out there and help her because the radiation levels could kill anybody, and she shouldn't be able to survive. And there's also like this idea that like Magneto could still be alive somehow.
Yeah.
And
people say still alive. I love the response to this. Charles Xavier says, I know, I've seen the t-shirts. Like, that's such a good line that just suggests, a a culture around this, and I love this dialogue here. I really like Quicksilver. This made me want a Grant Morrison book with Quicksilver in it. Like, even though Grant Morrison will never work on X-Men again, probably. But what do you think, Pietro? And he's like, I think my father's greatest trick is being more dangerous dead than he ever was alive.
Yeah.
That's a really cool little bit of foreshadowing as well. Like, this issue only really makes sense as it sets up right at Xavier's, but like, boy, does it suck all this, this magnet stuff just sucks the moon from the sky.
Yeah, once we get towards the back half of this issue, I think it just kind of goes off the rails.
Incoherent.
Yeah. They jump in their Mako device from Mass Effect and just start riding around. And the most important thing here is that Xavier's starting to notice something from the Mega Sentinel, that's the statue, the Omega Sentinel, and kind of looks like there's a face forming in one of the holes. So they go up there to check it out, and they run into Toad, Mini Toad, and other guy.
Yeah, I think he's called Shocker in this, but he's not the Spider-Man Shocker.
No. He's the sexual performance Shocker. That guy.
Yeah. He's all about La Pink and La Stink.
Mm-hmm.
And I like Toad here.
I do too. I like Toad a lot in this because he makes sense. He's like, we're literally just doing something to honor our dead, and like now the mutant police are here to fuck with us. What are we gonna do? Fight? Like, what are you here for? I live here, dog.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I just hang out in the radiation. The effects of how dangerous this place are not consistent, because now the X-Men are also not wearing suits.
Yes, yeah, because they're inside, and as we all know, just being inside stops radiation from Sentinels.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, we played Fallout.
Yeah.
So they're kind of saber rattling at this point, except for the X-Men, who are saber rattling.
They just grabbing her by the shoulders and just shaking her,
just like
it's a Chris Rock routine from the 90s.
Toad now has a smaller Toad with him. He's got another little subhuman little monster who he calls like Toad Jr. or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's really strange.
Yeah, Toad in waiting is what he calls.
Yeah, Toad in waiting, which I think is very funny.
Mm-hmm.
I love like the scene where it looks like they're about to fight. I presumably Storm has summoned up like the darkest, scariest looking storm clouds behind them. Like, I don't know what Toad thinks he's going to win in this fight. Like Toad in waiting plus a guy who can shoot electricity feels pretty outmatched.
Yeah, but like not even shoot electricity. Like the dude has like a wrench for a hand, like a wrench that would never work on just normal bolts. Like it's the worst wrench ever. He does
have wrench hands.
Yeah,
you're right.
Happening with that guy?
He's like a human crab hybrid. I know what the human crab's doing. Real weird. Just as a weird little bit of trivia, they're talking about this. Charles Xavier says, "We're looking for Lorna Dane Polaris. She's in danger. Wouldn't Magneto better? Wouldn't you think he'd want us to protect her?" And he the scene right here of Toad sticking to the wall is what they use for promotional art in wikis for Toad. Now this drawing is Toad.
I mean, it's probably the coolest that Toad has ever looked. I mean,
totally.
Like, you're not going to go to the X-Men Evolution Toad and to like pull some stuff out for that, right?
Like, what if a poor kid? And you're not going to do the old Toad with the motley and the Jester outfit. And here's some good dialogue. Toad says, all Magneto ever wanted, Xavier, was wanting you to admit that humans were murderous scum. Like, admit he was right. And that's a really good motivation for Xavier, like a real, Magneto. Like, he had complicated motivations. Like, I think Magneto is a complicated, good character, but also that's a real human thing. Like, God, just fucking admit that I'm right.
Yeah. They are bad people.
That is
like, there are bad humans. Like, they have literally murdered us before. You can't love all of them.
And here at Ground Zero, where they have done this Holocaust, you still can't fucking admit this thing. And of course Xavier can't admit. That's not Xavier's position. But Toad just being like, God, you can't even fucking give him this, after he's dead at the site where he killed us and so, a huge majority of our population. So.
And, during all of this, like, I just want to call out that Toad in waiting, the only thing that he says is work. Like, he doesn't have any spoken dialogue. Like, he just makes weird Toad noises at everybody, which I think is very strange.
He in his first appearance, he makes Toad noises and then says, "Bring on the species traders and human collaborators."
Oh, geez. All right, so
that's not great. Like, I don't know where this guy came from.
So he's just been watching a lot of YouTube lately, huh? Just auto playing some YouTube video.
Yep. So somebody introduced Toad in waiting to Joe Rogan. So, it's not great. Joe Rogan's guest and Joe Rogan himself. Just asking questions. So they go through, they're talking about Polaris. They're like, listen, Toad Waiting is also Toad Waiting, as I call the teenage tosser, is what he calls him.
Wow.
Excuse me, Toad Waiting? And he's right there. Like, he's right next to you, and you just called him the teenage tosser. Which, like, that just sounds dirty to me.
Does that mean, because tosser in British slang is like slang for a gay guy, right?
No, I don't know. Let's find out before we just throw that word around.
Yeah,
like for the rest of the episode.
Let's hit Urban Dictionary and see what kind of filth we're going to be able to read on the podcast.
Obnoxious jerk.
Oh, okay.
British slang for an obnoxious jerk. Thank God. Like, we really dodged a bullet with that one.
Yeah, I'm glad I was totally wrong on that.
yeah, me too. Toad was right.
This is when Jean Grey says, like, what are you actually doing out here? And Quicksilver does the Quicksilver thing where he runs all over the place and asks, have you been building some sort of insane monument to my father? And that's when we see like the outside of the statue where they have literally been building his face into one of these Sentinel robots.
Yeah.
Which is cool. That is a cool idea.
I think it's cool as hell.
I like it that it's Toad, and I wish like there would be just someone else besides Toad in Waiting and the Shocker to be with him there.
Yeah,
like,
Old Man Shocker.
Old Man Shocker, yeah.
So time passes at this point, right? So they're at a, and there's all this stuff. Toad's like, Magneto would not let Polaris die. He wouldn't even let these people die. So that's the foreshadowing of the dumb part of this issue. We cut over where Quicksilver is helping with the construction. Again, good characterization for him. He's going to do this tribute to his father. And I love this line here from Sabra, where she's like, these are strange times where superhero and super terrorist work together to make art.
Yeah.
Like, what a good line.
Extremely good line.
But magnets. So magnets have now shown up. And Jean Grey can hear them. It's like repeated thoughts and voices, like a radio. It's not just one person, it's a crowd. The magnets are sweeping them in a direction. So they're following the magnets to Polaris, who is just floating above the city.
And these magnets are not like what you were thinking of when you were picturing a magnet. Like, this is like a white blob filled with different colored like bubblegum pieces, right? Like, it's just, and it's just, they're all over the place, and somehow Polaris is gathering them to her.
It's like you left Airhead's taffy on your dash. On a hot summer day.
And now you no longer have that, and now it's disgusting.
Now you got Taffy Dash.
For the rest,
idiot, you got Taffy Dash.
For the rest of the time you're going to own that car, you have Taffy Dash.
Yeah. You got yourself, here's your problem. You got yourself a case of Taffy Dash. Like, so.
What's the length of time it would take for you not to eat the Taffy Dash? Like, would you be like, oh, this taffy is ruined, or would you be like, oh, I could probably eat that in a couple of days?
I think the taffy. Okay, so if I got to it quickly, I think I'd peel the taffy and eat or throw away.
Okay.
If it was a couple days, I think I would leave it, even though I'm sure it's still good because there's so much sugar and preservatives in Airhead's taffy. It's not like a food. But an ideal situation would be to save it in case your car got like stranded in the winter and then you had to like lick it for sustenance. Save it like the guy who survived off the hot sauce packets.
I just want to remind you that's the ideal situation, is what you just said. Like, that's the best possible thing that could happen with my taffy, is that I get stranded in the winter and have to lick it like an ice cream cone.
It's the best possible thing that can happen with Taffy Dash.
Gary, are you okay?
It's maybe not the best thing that can happen with taffy in general. No,
things good. You need to talk.
No, I do. That'd be pretty good. The guy in Portland got stranded and survived off Taco Bell fire sauce.
Sure.
Did you read about that?
I didn't. No, but that doesn't surprise me. You guys are very, hardcore up there about your Taco Bells and whatnot.
No, there's only one Taco Bell like nearby, and I've had it delivered a couple times, and I've just had this like Taco Bell craving. And they've never gotten my order right, and it's always like an hour and 45 minutes through like DoorDash and stuff. It's like the worst Taco Bell in the world.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
They opened one in the town that I live in, which is remarkable because it's a relatively small town, but it's like an extremely fancy Taco Bell, like, because it's all brand new and everything. I haven't been in it yet, but I just drive by and I'm like, you guys, is this a Taco Bell? Or you're like, what vibe are you going for here?
Upscale Taco Bell is real weird. Their new logo is really strange too, because it looks like an old logo that's been in the sun for too long. Like, it's black and white.
Oh, weird. I guess I haven't been paying attention. Yeah.
It's a real bold choice. So Lornadane Polaris is floating above the city, gathering Airhead's Taffy Dash. And people are like, oh, it's Lorna. There are millions inside of her. And now, like, nothing makes sense. She is absorbing the magnets. There's all these speech bubbles that are people's kind of last words.
Yep.
During this thing. And Lorna has full-on supervillain Joker face. It looks like she's going to turn evil.
And it should be noted that these magnets are also tearing all of her clothes off for some reason.
Yes. And we don't really know what's happening. Like, the characters are trying to explain it. Like, Thunderbird's like, she's acting like a magnetic pole. She's repelling us. And Jean Grey's like, I need to get this corrosive sludge away from Lorna. We don't really see any corrosive sludge going on here.
Yeah, I guess that could be like the green pool that she's standing over in the first panel, or the top panel of this page. But like, it's so, like, it just doesn't look like corrosive sludge. And then like when Jean Grey says she's going to do that, the next thing we see is Lorna floating with what looks like ocean waves, like kind of surrounding her, like you're surfing through a tunnel or something. And now she's buck ass naked with a cute little booty.
Yep, parting the sea. Jean Grey's like, her nervous system is overloaded. She's carrying millions of magnetic patterns, recording the last moments of Genosha. Charles Xavier's going to read her mind, but Storm just goes and grabs her.
Yeah.
Storm saves her, like swoops in. And they make this like supposition that she was trying to get at something under the surface, which is pretty weird. Jean Grey's like, hey, Neil, you're the X-Man who's immune to radiation poisoning. Go check out what's under the surface. He goes over there, reaches into this sludge that we hadn't really seen before, and grabs a black box like a flight recorder.
Yeah, this is super strange because, number one, like, I don't understand Thunderbird's power here. And at one point, it looks like one of his hands turns into the Mega Man gun, the Mega Buster or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. Not even going to ask a bunch of questions about that. But then, like, when he picks up the box, like, it looks like Lorna starts freaking out and starts, like, almost attacking Xavier.
Yeah, so she does. And she's and, like, you were up in the sky with Storm. She comes down, she's getting all these word bubbles, like, disaster speak. Like, oh, the phones are ringing, can you hear me? I can't see. Disaster things. Jean Grey and Professor Xavier decide to purge these forces from Lorna Dane. And they're finding out that Magneto put himself in this black box along with everyone. So Magneto, using the power of magnetism, because of cassette tapes, recorded everyone's voice using magnetism and then put it into a black box. And Lorna Dane was doing this because she needs to signal boost this. I have to boost the signal. I have to boost the signal daddy. As she's nude, like down on the ground, freaking out as they're like doing this like exorcism of her, getting rid of these magnetic voices from her brain.
And
this is nonsense. Like, if you're listening to this, if you don't haven't read the comics and like you don't know comics or whatever, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
we're doing the best we fucking can. Yeah, these aren't sentences. Like, this isn't,
Yeah,
this is horseshit.
And she starts reaching out towards the statue that they've been building, the monument they've been building to Magneto, and saying, "I love you, I love you." And then we hear this recording, which starts with, "Go ahead."
Real quick, I don't think actually Polaris is Magneto's daughter. I feel like that was something that everyone thought it because of the powers, and it was discredited. I could be wrong about this, and I can look it up and probably will. But this is inconsistent characterization. Polaris has not been like, oh, Magneto's my daddy in forever. Like, this is before she joined Pete Milligan's X-Men and became like a weird villain. But during this time, she was not like, oh, Magneto, my daddy. I feel like this is Grant Morrison, like Unis the Untouchable, reading the X-Men wiki and then playing with some toys. Which is fine. Like, I don't hate that, but it's just real weird because I think, Polaris is a character. Like, I've read a lot of comics with Polaris, and this just feels nothing like her.
Yeah.
So.
It's very strange to have this whole situation pop up because, like, what does any of this even mean? Like, what are we doing here? Like, what are we spending our time doing? She's screaming at her daddy, and then we hear Magneto's voice. He starts this off by saying, "This is the voice," which I think is a very funny way to say something.
Yeah, this is the voice.
I really want to start podcast with that now. Like, this is the voice. I'm the second voice.
I'm the second voice. And you're listening to Game Boner.
And you're listening to the podcast.
Yeah.
We're two white guys to get together and talk about Topic.
Yeah, dude. You like Topic? We know you do. So he's, this is the voice. This is the voice of Magneto, and there could be something kind of emotionally resonant to have the last words of Magneto, here. But it's kind of lame,
Well, it's bad last words, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen that sketch where the chick has the last words and it's the Nickelback song, and like everyone's freaking out about how great like, oh my god, that's so inspiring. Could have made it as a wise man.
I've not seen that, but that's very funny.
But yeah, like he's just saying, like, it's a strange thing to die in the darkness. It's a strange thing to die. Now I will be a voice in the darkness, echoing forever. Like all of this stuff, and it's fine, but like it's just kind of like normal words, I guess. Like there's nothing about Genosha. There's nothing, I don't know. It's just very strange.
Yeah. Well, and so then he says, once I was a mortal man, now I'm immortal. I'm a memory. They thought they could silence us, but instead we become magnetic and unstoppable. Like, first of all, that doesn't really tie into the foreshadowing that this is doing. The idea that like he's still around and he's going to do his plans from beyond the grave or whatever. That's cool. That's true. This is like a very sincere sentiment about like sending the voices of the Genoshans out into space on magnet waves at the speed of radio as like this emotional thing to be undercut by what actually happens in the story.
Yeah.
Like, I don't feel like this is particularly kind of strong. Also, like, what does this mean? Like, broadcasting it out, like the camera pans out as this is happening. Out of the island, but it's not like people around the world, like their radios are instantly tuning into the last words of Genoshans. And if they were, like, that's some fucking dark shit. Like, if I was going to be reminded, I would not be want to be remembered by like, oh, the phone is ringing, which is, it feels like 90% of the last words here.
What if you just picked up your cell phone? It was just Magneto saying, "I am the voice," and like everybody, it was basically the new car warranty phone call, spam calls, right? Like, this is Magneto, and I have concerns about your car's warranty service. And you're like, not again. God,
this is who? like Magneto. I'm an adult. Trust me, do my own insurance.
Sometimes I wish we hadn't killed those 16 million mutants, just so I could be saved from moments like this.
Yeah. It's very funny too, because one of the inconsistencies here, is the idea like, oh, the humans killed 16 millions of us, and they created the gun. They didn't pull the trigger though. Cassandra fucking Nova did, who is closer to a mutant than a human. So like the whole thing gets a little bit wonky here, and just these last words, and then we get this like surprise cut, like, and he's, beyond our voices travel far beyond this life and far, far beyond this death. We get a team shot of this group of X-Men as if this is going to be like a spin-off comic, and then that's it. The idea, I guess, is just like, oh, that's very profound. And then the end.
I guess.
It's really weird.
Quicksilver's crying in this shot. I just noticed that for the first time. He's got a little cheek wet going on.
So is Lorna Dane.
Yeah.
Crying. Everybody looks real sad. It would be very funny if like Multiple Man was in the background, just like a big smile on his face.
with like some earbuds in, just jamming.
Yeah. Just like, I love this song. Hey, Magneto, shut up.
Hold on, we're getting to the drop, Magneto. I gotta feel this drop.
I'm recording these last words so I can remix them. Is the phone ringing? Ringing?
Yeah, I feel like this issue as a whole, because this is the last really time we're going to be dealing with this Genosha. It's going to be brought up a couple of times, but like this is going to be the most direct we deal with Genosha, I think, for the rest of the series. And it's a weird note to leave it on. Like, I'm 100% here for the statue being built. I would even be like super interested in the black box of magnetic recordings of last words of 60 million people if like it had just driven Lorna crazy or something without all of the weird like ghost magnets floating around Genosha. Like that really is off-putting to me. And it's just you mentioned that this was probably the worst issue in the run, and I'm probably
it's one of.
Yeah, I mean, so far this is definitely the worst one that I think we've read.
Yeah. And we've had some absolutely horrendous art.
Yeah.
That has, rounded down some issues, but even when the art was bad, generally what was happening was pretty good. And we have the Enough Said issue, which is like visually really amazing, even though, the content is very slight. This just doesn't feel like it's doing a whole lot. Like this issue and the next issue of them like wrapping up loose threads.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not very exciting to me. Like, I get it, but it's also just, it's between arcs I really like the Weapon, the Weapon 13 arc, and I love writing Xavier's. It's, depending on the day you ask me, like one of my all-time favorite X-Men stories.
Oh yeah.
So this just doesn't do it for me. That's okay. Because the next issue, which is a filler issue, is a better filler issue.
Yes.
For one, I think. And then for two, this is almost over. So
we don't have too much guff to get through to get to the good shit. So yeah.
Yep.
Thank you everybody for listening. If you want to support the show, patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv is the place to do so. All sorts of cool benefits and features over there for you. Probably hundreds of hours of exclusive material from Gary and Cole, and some from me and Will, and just everybody on the network just is waiting for you at a pretty low price per month. So go check all of that out. Ratings and reviews are always appreciated, especially since we've changed the format. And thank you for everybody that has done that. We'll be back in a couple of days with the next issue of New X-Men.
Umbasa.
Wait, before we get started,
yeah.
I want to send you this. I didn't want to get us into a fucking derail, but I saw this. I'm DMing you on Discord. Apparently Marvel Girl showed up with green hair one time and was one of the Popopians.
Popopians? One of the Popopians.
Yeah, created by alongside the planet Pop-Up by the Impossible Man and Galactus.
Impossible Man. I hate the Impossible Man so much. If
This
you clicked
sounds-
on the
Ooh, boy. Let me see if there's any more images of Pop-Up, Planet Pop-Up. Nope,
yeah, just click on Popopians and you get the Impossible Man just sucking.
Just immediately sucking?
Yeah, just the picture. Ah!
Oh, dude. Jesus.
Yeah.
Gotta get the fuck out of here immediately.
Yeah. back.
So apparently Jean Grey had green hair too. I just wanted to follow up on that.
Fucking weird. Well, what if it was me? Am I doing the magnets? Well, that's how magnets work.